shall fight on the seas and oceans. We shall fight with growing confidence and growing strength in the air. We shall defend our island, whatever the cost may be. We shall fight on the beaches. We shall fight on the landing grounds. We shall fight in the fields and in the streets. We shall fight in the hills. We shall never surrender. And if, which I do not for a moment believe, this island or a large part of it were subjugated and starving, then our empire beyond the seas, armed and guarded by the British fleet, carry on the struggle until in God's good time, the new world with all its power steps forth to the rescue and the liberation.
Yesterday, December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy. The United States of America was suddenly and deliberately attacked by naval and air forces of the Empire of Japan. As Commander-in-Chief of the Army and Navy, I have directed that all measures be taken for our defense. But always will our whole nation remember the character. I ask Congress to declare that since the unprovoked and dastardly attack by Japan on Sunday, December 7th, 1941, a state of war has existed between the United States and the Japanese Empire.
Greetings, one and all. This is the last time I'm going to get to play that intro because we are wrapping up this series tonight. I will miss it. I love listening to Winston Churchill, man. I absolutely love it. He threw down the gauntlet in World War II, and I love listening to that speech. We have got one hell of a show for you tonight, folks. We are going to be talking about the final days of WW2, the end of the war. And we have a great panel here tonight, folks. We have got the Doctor of Destruction, the Master of Disaster, Adega Outlaw. Hello, Adega. How are you doing tonight, brother?
Good evening.
Good evening, sir. We have the crazy Canadian, the man who is launching his own history channel in the next couple of days, Rambling Canuck. How are you doing, Rambling Canuck?
Doing well, sir. Doing well.
And we have the one and only, the archer himself, ColinP Smith. How are you doing, brother?
Fine. Greetings to the land of Churchill.
Greetings, sir. And also on this panel tonight, we have a dear friend of mine, the Chicken Hawk of Chicken Hawks, Dave Bob. How are you doing, brother?
I'm doing well.
All right, guys. We are going to be talking about the end of the war, and it was absolutely insane, the final days of the war, because not only did you have the bomb that was dropped, but you had Russia pushing into Germany, you had America pushing in from the other side, you had the Allies coming in. Everyone was either descending on Germany or we were about to drop a cataclysmic bomb causing shockwaves throughout history on Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
I'd be tempted to say to call that a shot heard around the world, almost literally.
Yes. Yes.
To use a phrase from your history.
And then the controversy that spun out of it that still is argued today.
Yeah.
So, let's start off with the push into Germany, and we will end tonight with what happened at Hiroshima and Nagasaki. You had Russia pushing into Germany. They had pushed back the Germans. The Germans had made their way into the Urals and suddenly got pushed back by a no-nonsense, everything or nothing Russia.
Yep. Was stuck at Stalingrad for what, 18 months or something, wasn't it? Something ridiculous.
Yes. Yes, and the Russians were doing one of the things I got told a long time ago was that when the Russians would charge, they had machine guns at their back. They had machine guns pointing in their back, and if they retreated,
they also went into battle sometime without a rifle. They were expected to pick one up from a fallen comrade.
Yeah.
The personal order.
Yeah, the guy would go, the guy in front would have a gun. The guy behind would have a clip.
Any chance we could take a brief intermission for something very important?
Yes, indeed. I want to bring in Mark, the Infinitely Tired. You all know Mark. Mark is a wonderful guy, and I'd like to bring in Mary from Mary's Game Room. How are you guys doing tonight?
Good.
Well, it is a pleasure to have you here. I know that you two have a charity, very, very important charity that you guys have been working on. Could you tell us a little bit about it?
I sure can. It's called Extra Life, and it all started back in 2008, and it actually kind of started, I guess, before that. It all started with a little girl from Texas that had leukemia, and someone that their family knew that was like heavily into games, actually video games, asked her if she liked video games because she was confined to a hospital. She went into remission twice and she got leukemia 3 times. And she was finally confined to this hospital in Texas. And he asked her if she liked video games, and she said, "I love video games." And so he signed up with this. I can't remember what the name of it was, but all of a sudden, thousands of video games started showing up from around the U.S., from around the world. And she had so many games, she had to start donating them to other kids in the hospital. So it was something for them to do while they're stuck and confined in a hospital. So sadly, this little girl did pass away. And this guy started Extra Life in 2008, the year that she passed away. And I think it started off real small with like 1,200 gamers, and they started gaming for 24 hours, and they would raise money for, I think it was just Children's Miracle Network hospitals as a whole. But then it started growing, and so now like anybody can do it. You could sign up right now. Loki could do it right now and play video games and stream it for 24 hours and pick a local hospital where he's at if you wanted to. It's for anybody. You just go to their website, sign up. So this is the first year I've done it. I'm really into board games, not so much video games. So my aunt and my sister, we've gotten a group together, and we're headed down to the Orlando area, and we're going to play games for 24 hours, about 4 p.m. Sunday to about 4 p.m. on Monday. So we're hoping to get the wee hours of the morning in first, so we don't become exhausted. So, it's been interesting. The hospital that I chose is our hometown hospital, also Mark's hometown hospital. It's USA Children and Women's Hospital. I don't have a direct personal connection. It's more indirect with people that I know. I have a friend that she was pregnant and had the baby really, really early, and her child was in the hospital for about 3 months before she was able to go home. So she knows all the nurses there, and I think they're still friends today, and her daughter's like 13. So looks like Colin just asked if we'll be streaming the games. I have never ever done a live YouTube show. This is actually my first one. So I don't know if I'm set up to do that for 24 hours, but I do have I've got a Discord chat like ready to go, and I'm going to post that link in several different places. So anybody's welcome to join it. And my sister is in charge of controlling my Instagram that day and posting things and trying to do as much live stuff as we can. But it is a little distracting when you're trying to play games as well.
Yeah.
So, but I will let Mark say something now. He has a more personal connection to the hospital that I don't.
Mark.
Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. My connection, I mean, is it working now? Because I can't see myself.
Yes, we can hear you.
Sorry about that. My connection, I've got two connections to it. One of them, I mean, I don't want to, I'll go into detail, but I've talked about it in Discord, I believe, and on one of your on one of the live streams. But my connection to it is my wife and I lost our first child when due to some problems that female children have when they're born. Without going into much detail, it was a life death situation for my wife at the time. So we had to make a choice in that. But we did genetic work through women's and children's, and they were phenomenal. And we have two grown daughters now, 123 and 119. And my 19-year-old daughter Olivia had to visit there too because she was born with an enlarged tongue, and luckily enough she grew into it because she's the 19 going on 40. But that personal connection to it, I mean, I didn't want to get too deep into the personal, but I do have a personal connection that I feel very attached to this charity with, and it's a good cause and it's a great hospital.
All right. Thank you, Mark. Thank you so very much.
And I'd like to, I don't like to get on and just ask for money. Like, if you can't donate, that's great. I know these are hard times, that's fine. If you can't donate, just share the link. I'll post it in Loki's chat again. I know I posted it a couple times and Mark's posted it, but just sharing and getting it out everywhere. But I also want to thank every single person that's donated so far. So I'm going to go through the entire list, if that's okay with y'all.
That's fine.
All right. First up, Robert Pearson, Castle, a Nani Moose. I believe y'all are familiar with that name.
Yes.
I don't know if anybody but me actually knows who that is because I have their email. Purple Valkyrie, my sister-in-law Zila, if she does end up watching this video later. Lori Roberts, the Scarlet Pimpernel of subscribers. I also know who that is. Some fellow writers of mine, because I also write reviews for board games. Ben, Allie, Kinsley, Hiram, and Tanner. We have the famous Rock, Travis Dine, I don't know if I said that right, aka Chef Zilla. Samantha Joe, an anonymous donor that I have no idea who it is. It doesn't even have an email, so bless you. Samantha Joe and Generalissimo Jeff. Is that how you say that?
Yep.
Matthew Kearns, also a fellow writer of mine. Chef Zilla again, not Loki. And a friend of mine named Adam. And the Scarlet Moose, not a Nani Moose and not the Scarlet Pimpernel of subscribers, but the Scarlet Moose. So I thank everyone that's donated so far. I never thought it would even be that big. I set the goal really, really small. So I thank everyone that's been a part of this community that's helped so far. And if you'll just share and come join the Discord and just have fun while we play games for 24 hours.
Loki,
I will post lots of pictures.
Loki, will we have them both up? If you don't mind, may I say one thing?
Yeah.
I think I can speak for Mr. CCDV, who's in the chat. Mark, if you could send me the link on Twitter. Tomorrow night, Mr. CCDV and I have pretty much an all-night karaoke show that goes from about 9 o'clock to about 4 o'clock between the two channels, and we will promote the hell out of it.
Appreciate it, Canuck. I will most certainly do that.
Is this tomorrow night or Saturday?
Saturday night.
Saturday night. And if I make it to Florida in time, I might make another appearance. Who knows?
At karaoke.
I love karaoke.
All right, guys. Do you have anything else you'd like to say before we go on?
I
Uh,
don't think so. I appreciate you having us on.
there are a couple of things, and as far as the charity goes, that we decided through a couple of anonymous donors to put up some incentives. We've got several prizes that that you can qualify for. There's tiers and there's a grand prize. There's a tier for Vikings Gone Wild, which is up to was it $10 or more, Mary?
Yes.
And we have a second tier, which is $30 or more for Wingspan, which is an awesome game. But I've yet to play Vikings Gone Wild, but I've heard it's an awesome game. And for the grand prize, anybody who donates, is it $10 or more? What did we set the
Yeah,
grand
it's
prize?
10 or more.
10 or more is a copy of and I'm drawing a complete blank.
It's Blood Rage.
Blood Rage. Yeah, Blood Rage. Sorry, but and there'll be a few more things that'll pop up in there. And just take a look at the link. I'll get it to. I'll send it to you, Loki, or I'll send it to Purple to post up in the chat.
Okay.
So people can look.
Awesome. Thank you guys so very much. What you're doing is absolutely excellent. And I'm glad I got to be a small part of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your
Thank
time.
you.
You guys have a great night.
You too.
You too. Thank you.
All right, guys. That was Mary and Mark the Infinitely Tired. Thank you guys.
On a personal note, people who, you can hear it a little bit in Mark, he's well practiced over the years. But parents, you probably, those of you who saw the video where I was making a dessert, got to see my son, and we're still taking care of him. And it's not even so much the bills for going to the hospital where you're helping. There is an emotional struggle that all of these parents are going to go through. And there's a ton of doubts, a ton of questions, and a ton of fears that they all have to face. And little gestures go a tremendous way when people are living in those fears and despair over their children. This is marvelous. So do what you can.
Indeed. If you guys can help in any way, shape, or form, Purple Valkyrie just threw the link in the chat. So thank you. If you are interested, please click that link. If you can. If you can't, please share it any way you can. If you can share it on Twitter, Facebook, whatever, please share it anywhere you can, because this is for kids. And like I said, I'm glad that I got to be a part of it. So where were we? Oh my God, what we were talking about? Pushing into Germany. Russia was pushing into Germany, and they had machine guns at their backs. No retreat.
Nope. No, you do not retreat. You do not turn back.
And I believe, Dave, Bob, you're the one who said that they didn't even have a rifle for everybody.
Yep, like Adega said, the guy behind them always had a clip, so if they come up on a fallen comrade, that they would take that rifle or submachine gun, whatever that they had, and they were expected to use it.
Hope you've got the right clip for the weapon, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Throw bodies at the problem until it goes away was the Russian solution. Also, the T-34 helped quite a bit.
Yeah, the T-34 helped.
Yeah, that slanted armor went a long way.
Yes.
Chinese had a similar idea with throwing people later on, didn't they? In Korea, in particular, I think.
Yes, the Japanese had the same theory. But yeah, no, the turnaround starts for Russia at Stalingrad, and then the major one was Kursk, because that was the first time that German armor was defeated en masse.
Yep.
And they had a huge supply problem, if I am correct, because when the winter came, because they invaded at the wrong time. When the winter came, the Russians sat back and they drank their soup and they stayed warm, and everything the Germans had froze.
Well, yes, and not only that, but Hitler had, sorry, I can't use that name. The person in charge of Germany at the time did not think the war would go on that long, and that was his mistake. So what it did was it gave Stalin enough time to bring in the troops from Siberia. So battling in winter was nothing for the guys from Siberia. On the other hand, it was a little bit different for the Germans.
Yeah. One of the things I did, I'm not sure like is what I did as an animal-loving Brit. The Russians had this idea of training dogs to go and hide, to just run under a tank.
Yep.
Now, on its back, it had a bomb with a detonator. And the idea is it runs under the tank, pushes the detonator, blows up. Unfortunately, they trained the dogs on Russian tanks.
Yep.
When they let them go, they didn't recognise the German tanks. So the Russians decided not to use this after all, which is an animal love I'm quite glad of, actually. You do what you have to do in the war, obviously. Yes, I was quite amused by the first time I heard that.
Yep. And meanwhile, on the other side of the world, in the Pacific, the Japanese finally decided to just stop squandering their troops and dig in on the islands, and they just started putting up a hell of a fight. But they did also at the same time start throwing their young pilots in kamikaze waves trying to stop the Americans. So in one sense, they decided to stop the just the mass charges and stuff with the troops, but in the air they just trained their young men just to fly into ships.
Apparently, the kamikaze means divine wind. It's named after a particular event in Japanese history where the Chinese were going to invade Japan in the Middle Ages. I can't remember the exact time period. But then the only reason they did was they, quite similar actually in partly to the Spanish Armada this side of the world, they were driven back by a storm, which the Japanese called the divine wind, and I believe that's where and in the kamikazes for.
Yep, that was a typhoon, I believe.
Yeah.
That was one of the reasons that they ended up actually using the bomb, was because they were pretty much convinced that there would probably be close to 500,000 casualties or more if they invaded the home islands of the Japanese.
Well, the Japanese people had absolutely no choice in what was going on, and it was going to be in the end it was going to be a bloodbath.
Oh yeah, a lot of lives were saved.
On both sides.
Yes, on both sides. I have heard certain recounts of history that say that, well, the war was already over and that we did it just to test it and all kinds of crap. They were not going to surrender.
Nope.
It was going to be fight to the very last man, woman, and child, and that's what they wanted to do.
Well, to be fair, there was a group within the Japanese hierarchy that did want to surrender. The problem is there was one sticking point. The United States wanted unconditional surrender.
Yep.
Japan wanted, okay, we'll give you that, but nothing can come of the emperor.
Yep, got to keep the emperor.
And where people say that the bomb being dropped didn't really didn't end the war, because basically there was a proposal made through back channels, and they've got the documents now, from Japan to the United States for a surrender. The thing is the emperor was not allowed to be charged with anything because they'd seen what happened at Nuremberg.
Yep.
Right? So the emperor was not allowed to be disgraced this way. And the response was no, unconditional surrender. The problem with it is the document that was sent before the bombs were dropped is pretty much word for word what was signed on the Missouri after the bombs were dropped. So that's where that controversy comes from.
And Eastland Burkholder brings up sixth graders with sharp sticks would have fought us. The bomb saved lives. That's not only true for Japan, but Germany as well. There is video that I have seen, real video, of the leader of Germany bringing a group of they were youth.
The Hitler
youth.
Yes, a whole group of kids that he brought in armed and were on the ground in Germany in the very last push.
Yes, and also as a matter of fact, at near the end, they were the ones that were manning the air towers in Berlin. So in World War II, Berlin, they had these major, big, fortified positions for the AA guns.
Yeah, there were 4 of them.
Yeah, four big towers, basically. And they were manned mostly by people under the age of 16 by the end of World War II.
That was in the final days, yes. Weren't they called, what did he call them, castles?
No, there was a name for them, but it escapes me at the moment. But yeah, they were huge, major developments, and they took up a whole bunch of resources, and people questioned whether it was mandatory or not. But
giant concrete structures. Yeah. The Germans loved their giant
concrete structures. Look at their sub pens off the coast of France. They're still there.
They were pretty brilliant too. They were built in layers. Like if you were to bomb those things, you would take out one layer, but there's 10 feet between each layer, and it would just collapse on the next layer. You could not, like those submarine bases, they're still there.
The submarine pens were heavily fortified with that concrete, and it was almost impossible to get them. I think the British finally dropped a big giant bomb that finally penetrated one pen, I believe.
Yeah. Designed by Barnes and Wallace, who designed the Dam Busters, and I believe also dropped by Lancasters.
Yes. Yep. And there's a story. I don't know if I've told this story since we started doing this. There was the biggest sub pen in Germany, or fort that the Germans had. It wasn't in Germany. This was the biggest sub pen that the Germans had. Was run by a local. And a local of the village that was right next to the sub pen. And in the final days, the villagers overran the sub pen with help from Allied forces and took it. And this man was executed right there and then on the spot. What they did not know at the time was that this man had been sending information to the Allies the entire time. When the wolves, Canuck, help me out here. It was the wolf packs. Thank you. The wolf packs. When the wolf packs would actually be there, when they were deploying and where they were going. This man had been sending the Allies information since he took the job, and he was executed because they did not know. They had no idea that this man had been sending information across the lines, saving lives and helping the Allies hunt down the wolf packs.
Yeah.
Yeah, there
And
was
at
a
the
lot
same
of that.
time, the British had
end.
broken the code
The
of the
Enigma.
Enigma.
Not
Again.
once, but twice.
Yep.
Not
And
one.
actually, there's a submarine story that talks about when they got the fourth reel Enigma, because originally there was only 3 reels on the Enigma,
Yeah.
and then they changed it to a fourth reel, which of course completely messed everything up for decoding it. So what they did was they forced the submarine to surface, and as the crew was leaving, to be saved by the ship that forced them to surface, they'd pretty much determined that the ship was set to scuttle. The crew of the ship snuck aboard the submarine, which could blow up at any moment and go under the waves, and grab the Enigma without the crew that is being put on deck noticing. And
they
then
also got all the code books with it.
Yes. And then they sunk. The other thing that helped them crack Enigma was the Germans had this really bad habit of ending every transmission with Hail Hitler.
Yeah.
So if you could decipher that, the end of the message, you could decipher the rest.
Thing is also, of course, that there was Enigma was the machine. The codes, there was Lorentz was the big code. There was, I think, there was a naval code. There were about 4 different ciphers that we actually cracked eventually. But I think it was Lorentz was the one that they put the 4th code in. I'm not sure. It's a while since I read up on that.
They also had to I guess, so that the Germans wouldn't know that they had cracked the code. There was a lot of times when they had to let Allied shipping and stuff get sank, and a lot of lives were lost just, so they wouldn't, know that, hey, they know exactly what we're doing all the time, so it was used sparingly.
Yeah.
And Chris Brown, yes, we actually covered the Messerschmitt and how Germany was sending the Messerschmitt to Japan so Japan could develop its own jet. We talked about that last week on here. Usually Thursday nights, if you're new here, Thursday nights are our history nights. Usually we do pop culture in the mornings. We talk about comic books on Tuesday, and we talk about the history of war on Thursday. So last week we went over the Messerschmitt and the mountain base, the giant mountain base that housed them. So you had Russia pushing into Germany, you had the Allies pushing into Germany, but you also had a group of scientists that worked on every project, almost every single secret project Germany was coming out with, from the V2s to the Messerschmitt, and those scientists were getting ready to bolt. And the main reason why the United States suddenly went into overdrive science-wise was because of Operation Paperclip.
One of them being one Brown.
Yes, von Braun.
Did
Most
we
of the Germans trying to get away from the Russians. They were driving straight for the American and English front.
Yeah.
And they would have been treated a
didn't want to
lot
be
better from the West than they definitely would from the East, and they knew it.
Yeah. The Russians wanted everything. They wanted the technology. They wanted the blueprints. The Germans were burning everything as they left, or at least trying to. And as Russia was pushing in, they wanted those scientists. They wanted those scientists.
And they got a good number of them.
And they got a lot, and they got a lot of the techs that worked on the equipment, but they didn't get the brains behind the new German weapons because of Operation Paperclip. The U.S. did.
Yeah. And what really, really frustrates me at times, we gave you 2 bloody Colossi, We kept 2, one of which went to what's now GCHQ, and we denied the existence for 30 years, which let IBM claim to invent the computer. That annoys me. I can understand why, but it does affect my national pride a wee bit. It's understandable, but yeah, we gave you at least 2, I think, colossuses, and the rest Churchill ordered destroyed.
Well, that was to hide the existence of Bletchley Park.
Yeah, well, they literally, I think, my late father used to know someone who actually worked at Bletchley Park a very long time ago, but I don't think Bletchley Park was even acknowledged to have existed until the 1970s.
Yeah, it was denied heavily.
Oh, yeah.
And I'd really, really love to go there. One of these days, I'm going to take the time to go up the motorway and go to Bletchley.
And since we're talking about the Allies and the Russians converging on Germany, I always find it funny. And we started this talking about Churchill. Well, there's an American figure that was synonymous with World War II, and that'd be Patton. Mm-hmm. There was one thing that Patton and Churchill agreed on that Roosevelt did not. Roosevelt ended up winning the day on it, and that was that the Allies should have taken Berlin, not the Russians.
Yeah.
Possibly gone on to Moscow as well.
He also wanted to go into Russia, though, afterwards.
Yes, he did, which is why he lost the 45 election.
Yeah.
So in all of this, we have 2 future superpowers getting ready to invade Germany right on their doorstep. And they almost met in the middle, which is why for so long Germany was split. You had the Russian side and you had the Allied side.
It was actually divided up between England, America, and the Russians.
Yeah. And of course, the wall for that came down in the 80s.
An iron curtain has descended.
From Trieste in the north to... Crap, I've forgotten what it was. Stettin in the north to Trieste in the south, wasn't it?
Yes, I believe so.
I was looking for Twitter, but yeah. Winston again.
That was pretty much the way the Russians did. If they got their hands on it, they took it. I mean, It wasn't any different. I mean, they were socialists just like the Germans were. That's what they did. They found a resource, you exploit it.
And then in the aftermath, the art and stuff that was taken when the Germans got France and all the other occupied countries, there is still priceless paintings that are just gone.
Yeah.
Well, they're sitting in George Soros's mansion.
There's probably a lot of that is in black market, underground, and collections, private collections, and you'll never see them again.
I'm sure you're right.
There are supposed to be 3 bunkers that housed a lot of gold, a lot of art, a lot of artifacts that still have not been found in the mountains.
Yes. And there's also rumors of it being sunk. So some of the stuff was put into containers and dropped into a lake. And people to this day go treasure hunting in that lake, looking for whatever was found. Because the story goes, there was, and I'm trying to remember where, but I think it's near the Ardennes, one of Hitler's summer homes. There were trucks going towards the lakeside as the Allies were coming. And these were just columns of trucks. And then they would go out in the boat and they would come back with an empty boat. And they'd go out with a full boat, come back with an empty boat for like 3 days. and none of that has ever been found.
And it could have very well ended up on a submarine that sits in the Pacific right now.
There was a lot of the submarines that were trying to get gold and stuff out of there that were sank.
Yeah.
There's a lot of suspicions that, I mean, you can see, and I'm not picking on anyone's religion, but there were certain religion or religious people at the time that were quite helpful to the Germans in both moving equipment, resources, and people out of there.
Here, I think I got this before you dig it. Catholic Church.
I'm not pinning any names, but yeah. And then there are very, very credible witnesses and evidence that Argentina happened to house quite a few famous people that should never have been seen the light of day.
Oh yeah, they caught a bunch of them down there.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it was. Yeah, they went from monastery to monastery and ended up in Argentina.
Icon, for example.
And we have a $1 skull from Stephanie Littlepage. Thank you so very much, Stephanie. And if you guys want to do it with me, it'll be a 5-way skull.
Drink in hand.
Skull!
There it is! Take your hat off, boy. That's a dollar bill.
Dollar bill.
It's a dollar bill. And Stephanie Littlepage says, if you don't mind not being able to put on any sunscreen or anything for a while, you can visit the site where they detonated the first atomic bomb. Yes, you can.
Yep.
Indeed, you can.
Yeah, going back to the Pacific, you guys have already heard me talk a little bit about my dad. He was, on a support craft. Wasn't one of the big important ones, except it was a support craft that would repair ships as they were sailing back and forth. And he happened to be in the Pacific and knew of the delivery of the bomb. One of them, not both of them. And he was there. There was a bunch of captured German ships after the war, not just, military personnel. And someone came up with a bright idea that we should try these nukes out on the ocean and see how well and you guys have all seen the pictures. My dad was there when they started nuking those ships, the German ships. And the biggest thing my dad said about it, other than you had to hide your eyes and all this other stuff, he thought it was personally a waste because the Germans made some really impressive battleships that they just sent them right down to the bottom. Some of them that survived the blast, he told me they were so hot that they couldn't get near them, and they just sank them on the spot. So they're sitting down there along with the other ones that got melted under the nukes.
Radiated. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
The other thing that that happened post World War II was the Americans discovered a little surprise that Japan had for the United States. It was a failed attempt to attack the mainland U.S., which was an aircraft carrier submarine.
Yep.
Right.
And they surfaced, and instead of, maybe taking one to take a look at them, they just sunk them to the bottom of the ocean so that the Russians couldn't get their hands on them.
Right.
Well, let's not forget the Japanese did actually manage to bomb the west coast of America.
Yes, and actually, if you're thinking of the same way that I'm thinking of, which is the bombs by parachute, balloon bombs. Yeah, they're still finding them in the States.
Oh yeah,
they're still finding them because they made them. Basically, they sent them up in Japan, and then the air current would take it over to the States. Yeah, the jet stream would take it over to the States, and then they would drop at certain intervals, and they're still finding those bombs in the United States to this day.
Yep, you believe it.
And also the Indianapolis, I believe, was the ship that carried one of the bombs over there, and it was sunk by Japanese submarine, I believe, when it was going back, and most of the crew were eaten by sharks.
Yes. That's where the 20 men went into the water. Yeah, that's what what's his name's talking about in Jaws.
Yeah.
I can never remember his name.
Robert Shaw, the actor. This is Robert Shaw that played that film. Wait, let's not forget, of course, that we had nuclear testing, which gave us Godzilla. I mean,
Right.
without the nuclear
Quint.
Godzilla.
Quint,
yes.
that's his name. Yes, Admiral Quint. Yes. Well, I mean Admiral. Is it Belzadil? I don't want to say your name wrong, sir. Quint. Yeah, it was Quint in Jaws. Thank you.
And I mean, the other thing that the Japanese was getting ready to use, and they'd used it sparingly, but later on after the war, the Americans got to find out just what was waiting for a mainland invasion. They were going to take kamikaze to a whole new level. They had midget submarines, one-man submarines that were basically a bomb.
Yep.
And they were going to use those. If I remember
those.
right, they were called Kaitan. Yeah, I think it was Kaitan.
Yes.
Yeah, Kaitans. They were going to use those, and they were also going to use the what left of their aircraft as kamikazes because it was the best. It was the best offense they had against the American fleet at that point because they'd already sacrificed all their capital ships between Leyte Gulf and Okinawa.
Yeah.
So.
And they had men on those in those torpedoes because they could actually maneuver them.
Yeah.
See, back then it was fire, and they went in a straight line, and then they blew up, and that was it. That's all you had. And the Americans had some really shitty torpedoes.
Oh yeah, at the beginning of the war for 2 years. Yeah.
Half the time the torpedoes didn't even go off. It was a 50-50 split whether the torpedo would explode on impact or not.
Yeah, it took them a couple of years before they finally got that worked out.
Yeah, that was because the brass was saying it was the captain's fault, and the captains were going, no, it's not. And then they finally, imagine this, they did testing and then found out that, oh, the captains had a point. It only took them 2 years to do testing, but there's that.
So, go ahead.
So yeah, testing helps. I think we'd actually come up with, presumably independent. I think the Allies. I'm not sure if it was us or you came up with the midget submarines as well. I think they're the 2-man submarines.
Oh yeah. The British used them to sink almost sunk the Tirpitz, didn't it?
I think so. Yeah.
They tried with midget submarines. Unfortunately, it was unsuccessful. What finally got them was an air raid that never should have succeeded, but it did because later on after the war they found out they had help on the ground.
Well, they did. I think they actually did damage the Tirpitz with the midget subs.
Yeah, it was damaged, but it wasn't taken out of commission.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't sunk. But
yeah.
Well, one more thing. You guys heard me talk about this too, and there's so much in college and bad information that's going around, and I've said this several times for you new people. Well, this is how it is. My friend's father from Japan, and my friend, he talked with him about it, and they talked. It's just kind of important there in Japan to remember what they did. But I asked him about it one time, and he said, yeah, it's generally understood that if Japan had the bomb first, they would have easily used it. There would have been no hesitation. And he and his father, even though his father, he's probably passed away now, was so afraid of the United States even afterwards. But And they knew that they were wrong. But both of them admitted to me, said that we did the right thing. And as much as there's people in our countries now that are saying we never should have dropped it, should have done this, the Japanese themselves, the honest ones, say you saved a lot of lives, both Japanese as well as American lives. We did the right thing.
Well, and not only that, but not only did it save lives, but one of the reasons that Truman had no choice but to drop the bomb when he did was what Loki hinted at, which is the Russians. Because right before the bombs were dropped, Russia finally decided, oh, well, we're going to attack Japan now.
Yeah, declared
And
war on Japan.
They started coming down and seizing more territory. And for the United States, that was a bad thing. And for the Allies, that was a bad thing, because the more that the communists were able to gobble up and take during war was a bad thing. So if this war had carried on to a ground war, the Soviet Union would have looked very different, and it would have had a lot more land. China probably would have been part of USSR by the end of it.
And we have a $1.99 tip from Psychodork9. Thank you so very much, Psychodork9. And since we're, talking about atomic testing, I might as well. Godzilla, let's go! Thank you so very much, Psychodork9. He says later on, Weapon Alpha versus the Russian Magnum, dueling nukes. That is so very true, Psychodork9. And we have another tip from Anonymous for $1. Thank you so very much, Anonymous. And score!
There it is! Take your hat off, boy. That's a dollar bill.
Memo to self: take off headphones before Godzilla Skull comes on. Of course, the other thing, of course, is that we mentioned about the who youth and the rest of it. Of course, that the Japanese, as I think someone mentioned earlier, some of the things that they were told to expect. They just were dug in and fought. And I remember seeing stories of the American forces actually eventually understanding what was going on and actually getting people who spoke Japanese to explain to the Japanese what would really happen if they surrendered, because they were
majorly misinformed. They were told that they would get killed, they would get raped, pillaged, the whole 9 yards. And actually, not only did they use other POWs from Japan, but one of the icebreakers was chocolate.
Well, to know that.
And a quick message from Anonymous, who just gave us that skull. He says, or they say, because I don't know if it's he or she, an expert from Lawrence Binion's poem, "They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning we will remember them. Thank you for your sacrifice." Thank you so very much, Anonymous.
Truly the greatest generation.
The only time I actually didn't really mind being out in the cold and having to actually do button flies on my two dress to TA was on Remembrance Day parades. So I thought, I don't mind how uncomfortable it is in Remembrance Day parade. And I was extremely impressed with my middle niece, who's the youngest of my nieces, who's got a kid a few years ago now. We were talking about something, and she said she made sure that her kids, and I think my other niece's kids, knew all about Remembrance Day and the rest of it. Some people these days could do with knowing.
Yeah.
Someone had mentioned this in chat earlier, and it's something that, both my mom and my dad more, he was more of the popular person when he was young, but, imagine, you went to high school with, a couple hundred people, 500 people. You go to war, you come home, and there's 2 of you left.
Yeah.
That's what they went through.
So is this the point in the show where we give Loki grief because he was the one that told us all to pick airplanes and have them ready for this show? Sorry, he didn't even do it.
Yeah.
Oh,
Well, you
Dave
already
Bob
picked
has
the
his
lightning,
wings.
so I didn't know about
There
it.
we
I would have
go.
picked the Thunderbolt.
It's okay. You got wings already.
Yeah.
Chicken Hawk.
it has been an insane week, gentlemen.
I know, but I had to give you grief. I had to.
And it's not over yet. It is absolutely positively not over yet. Oh, guys, thank you for being here. Thank you for taking the time to hang out and to talk about this topic, because it's not something a lot of people would do. It's not. And especially today where you've got so many people wanting history to be silenced. Me and Adega started doing this because we are going to tell it the way it is, the way it was. We are not covering revisionist history. We are telling it like it was. And I see things. They're even. We talked Spartans a couple of weeks ago. They're trying to change that now and say that the Spartans were evil and that the Persians were all great and wonderful and just a barrel of monkeys. Those Persians. That's not the way it was, ladies and gentlemen.
Let's put them all in a time machine and send them all back and see what they say then.
Yeah. I think they'll be changing their tunes really quick.
Yeah.
I just want to throw out a couple of books that I've read on World War II that I think everybody that has any interest in it should probably try to get a copy of. One of them is Company Commander by Charles MacDonald, and another one is If You Survive by George Wilson, and the last one is Before Their Time by Robert Kalautzwitz or something like that. I can't pronounce his name. But those books are basically firsthand accounts from people that went through, just literal hell in the war.
I've got Fitzroy McLean's Eastern Approaches, which I was reading about because he's in the Western Desert with the SAS. I can also recommend something I remember from my childhood. This is going back, I'm trying to think, probably half the way between here, probably nearer the war than it is to us. And there was a BBC series called The World at War with Sir Laurence Olivier negotiating it, narrating it. And if you can get hold of it, it is fantastic. There was one episode in that my parents would not let me as a teenager watch because they'd lived through the war bottom. And that was the one about the concentration camps. But I've seen it since once. I don't think I could actually bear to watch it again. But it's a fantastic series. And there's even some of the commentaries you get on it. There's I've forgotten the chap's name again. He's an American author. Stephen something. Like quite thick books on World War II, and he actually does a sort of a commentary bit as well on the extras. But it's well worth it. It covers the whole war all the way through. And as I say, that was done in the 70s, so it was only 30 years later, rather than 70 years that we are now.
There's another series that's really good, and that's For King and Country. If you can find that series, it's really good.
I haven't heard of that. Is that books or TV?
It was a series that was done back when the History Channel actually put history on it. And they tour. A lot of it is the Canadians and what they did in World War I, World War II, and the battlefields that they went to. The gentleman goes to the actual graveyards that are overseas, and you get to see the Canadian graveyards in every battle that they're talking about. It's a really, really well done series. Had my damn dream job.
There is another series. It doesn't just cover World War II, but it is wonderful. It only lasted for 2 seasons, and I was heartbroken when they canceled it. And that was History Channel's Dogfights. And if you want to see some if you want to see some kick-ass aerial combat, I've got it all on DVD. You cannot get it on Blu-ray, unfortunately, but I've got it all on DVD. It's probably 20 years old now, but the dog fights in that, if you want to learn about air combat,
some of the 360 battles too that they had, in the Pacific and whatnot. They did some good jobs.
Oh yeah, those were some good jobs. The piece they did on the Enterprise was really good.
I mean, I think we do tend to forget. Possibly, I'm not sure. I don't want to put down my cousins across the pond there to your south, but we do, I think, quite often tend to forget that when we say Britain, we don't mean this pissy little island I live on. We've got you guys, we had the Australians, we had the New Zealanders, we had the South Africans, we had the Indians. I mean, God, look what happened what the Indians did against the Japanese.
Yep.
We do quite often, I think.
French resistance.
Well, yeah.
And also one of the highest decorated units in the United States at the end of World War II, surprisingly enough, were made of all Japanese.
Yep. And that was in the European theater.
Yeah. Mm. There's one thing. I mean, I've had my problem. One thing. Talking about the French resistance and the rest of it. One thing I was really, really, really nervous about with the last series of Doctor Who, which was on one episode. I actually mentioned they actually brought in they went back to Paris in the 1940s, and they brought in a real life heroine who died in a prison camp after being captured and won the George Cross, which was the highest award given to civilians. And they brought her in simply because of her background. And that I was really, really, really pissed with the BBC about that. If they want to do that, they should have done it properly. Yes, you're right. We don't even very often remember the resistance. And of course, your guys, the SOE and the OSS, both in Europe and even and indeed in the Far East, there's not much gets said about those either. Either the resistance themselves or the people that went in to help them. And of course, there was a German resistance, which no one ever remembers.
That's true. That's true. And a lot of them died. Not just like the one you talked about at the naval station. I can't remember the name of the girl she had organized. They were doing leaflets against, and they were hiding against the Nazi party. And they have little monuments to them because they were executed for trying to point to the people of how wrong they were being and how deceived they had been. And yeah, they were everywhere. We talked about it a few weeks ago. I can't remember the name of the lady, but she was one of those Tokyo Rose, and she was giving codes to the Americans of what was going on, what she was seeing, and helping them understand some of the troop movements and tactics of the Japanese through code over Tokyo Rose. And Tokyo and the Japanese thought she was on their side. In fact, she wasn't.
Yeah.
Absolutely epic. Guys, thank you again. Thank all of you. Thank you very much for being here. Thank you, chat, for hanging out with us tonight. We will be back next week with something new. We have ended the World War II. What did we do? We did a trilogy almost.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Do
we
you
will
mind
be
if
back.
I get a cheap plug-in before you end it here?
Sure,
Loki?
go right ahead. Go right ahead, Canuck.
I invite everyone. I don't know if I'll put it in a private chat. Loki can put it in the main chat. Tomorrow morning at 6:45, myself and Admiral Doom, who everyone has probably seen on this channel or on Doom's channel at one point or another, will officially launch our history channel. It's History with R&R. We're starting with Vimy Ridge, which was when Canada became a nation on the world stage. It was our trial by fire. And I hope to see many names in the subscriber list. We're going to start with videos first, not live streams. And I just hope that you all enjoy the new content. So tomorrow morning, I'm very proud of the video that we put out, and I hope that you all enjoy it.
Thank you, Rambling Canuck. Thank you, Adega Outlaw. Thank you, Dave Bob. Thank you, ColinP Smith. And we will see each and every one of you tomorrow morning for the end of the week Mornings of Mischief. Don't miss this one. We are going to have Mexican Iron Man, the Brown Lantern, and the one and only Lady Gravemaster returns to Loki's Mornings of Mischief. I cannot wait to see you all there, and we will catch you guys later.
Hi all.
These videos are tremendous. Like, comment, and subscribe, and hammer that notification bell.